Okay. So the meeting is now being recorded, and once again, welcome aboard. This is going to be a fairly lengthy presentation, so I just want to caution you that it'll be my effort to provide some Q&A time, but I was just going through all the slides and I modified some slides last night as I was preparing for this session. And I've added whole entire section on developing a research proposal, which many of you will be required to do unless you've already done so. Whether you are going to be pursuing a doctoral program or you're just writing a grant or you are in a master's program, you'll be called upon to do some scholarly writing, write some articles and things of that nature. So all of you are going to get something out of this, but the latter part of the program, the second half of the program, is going to be fairly heavy and technical insofar as the developing a research proposal is concerned. Some of you may already know how to develop a research proposal, but my understanding is that we can always learn something new from the program that we attend. So with that said, let me begin the workshop. Um, and again, all of you, I know that we are going to be together for 90 minutes, okay? So if you need to get off early for some reason, please do so. You don't have to raise your hand and ask for permission. Like with any meeting, you can excuse yourself and just leave the meeting, okay? All right, so let's start with the first slide. Writing can be both a complex process and also a very simple activity, okay, depending on how you look at it. But a lot of people encounter some difficult feelings when it comes to writing. And when I say writing, I'm really talking about not writing a letter to your girlfriend or a boyfriend, or you're writing a letter to your aunt or your uncle. Those are colloquial pieces of writing. I'm talking about scholarly writing, academic writing. Okay, so I hope all of you are clear on that, and I hope that's the reason why you're attending this workshop. So some of the feelings and emotions and apprehensions people have about writing as a process can be getting stuck, feeling helpless. You don't know where to begin, how to begin, what you're going to be writing about, and what form you want to present your ideas in. There's going to be fear, worry, anxiety, turmoil. A lot of the stuff happens around rambling. Okay, you'll ramble, you start to write something, but you don't know where you're going. So just keep on writing. And then you stop and you look back and you say, "Wow, this doesn't make sense. I'm not impressed with my own writing." So there's a number of different factors that come into play. Feeling overwhelmed is another one. A lot of my students, as you know, I coach doctoral students, and I'm also, by the way, a writing coach. Okay, I do charge a modest fee for Indian students who take my coaching for writing, specifically writing. All right. So that's one of my activities. But I've noticed that students feel very overwhelmed, feel very swamped. They don't know exactly how to put their ideas together in a coherent, in a cogent way that will be received well. There's confusion, disorientation, awkwardness about writing, lack of control, chaos, avoidance. And it just in the middle, this, if you look at this section here, avoidance, procrastination, and disappointment. Those are the three emotions that people encounter for the most part when they're talking about writing. So I'm sure all of you at some point in time have experienced some of these emotions yourself, and can probably, in your mind, as you're seeing this slide, I'm sure some of you will agree that these are things that sometimes hold you back from writing. So you could be a really, really good writer, but if you don't know how to put your ideas together in an organized way, then it becomes sort of like a roadblock for you. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. Now, this is a populated slide, so don't worry about reading each and every part of it. The session, like I said, is going to be recorded, so I'll send you a recording, which I'll upload to YouTube, and then you guys can always catch up on the slide. And if at the end of the presentation, if some of you are looking for, please do not do annotation. Um, it's very distracting. Okay, do not use the annotation tool, please. Thank you. Um, so what is really happening in this slide is some of the issues that people encounter. Okay, um, authors do not know or do not need to know in advance what they want to say before they begin to write. So a lot of people assume that I should know exactly word for word what I need to say before I start writing, and that is not true. Okay, you can have ideas and you can have many things to say, but if you if you're always constantly worried about, okay, so what am I going to do, how am I going to go about doing this, then you're never going to really get started. Okay, so writing does not have to begin with an outline. Rather, a detailed outline can be produced from the writing after it has been written well. So don't worry about creating a whole outline of what you're going to write about. Okay, correctness is unimportant in the first draft. So when you're writing, you're going to have a lot of iteration back and forth. Okay. Um, do not pursue correctness in the very first draft. It's not important to have everything correct and everything organized in the very first draft. The draft is the whole purpose of a draft is these are rough ideas. This is your rough piece of writing that you're going to look back on and correct and revise and so forth. Editing for spelling, grammar, and typos does not count as a revision. So people say, "Oh, I'm going to revise my content. I'm going to immediately go." They'll write 3 lines or 4 lines or a short paragraph, and they are so worried about going and doing the typo check, the spelling and grammar check. It's not important, guys. Get the writing done first. You can always do the spell check, always do the grammar check later on. So don't get too bogged down about doing all of that right at the front end. Okay. So revision is a word that is often used to revise and edit your own content, but that doesn't mean that if you're doing some typo checks and grammar check, that's not revision really. Okay. Academic authors should not imitate the verbose, difficult to read writing they sometimes see in print. Okay. So if you're writing, and now with the advent of AI, which everybody is using, a lot of folks are using, and then and I'm not saying, I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying do not use AI. I'm saying use it judiciously. AI should be used as a helping tool and not replace your pen or not replace your brain and not replace your thinking faculties and critical thinking skills. So use AI judiciously. Okay. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation, how to go about that. There is not one linear writing process to which all writers ought to conform. So isn't, this workshop is not intended to be a roadmap for each of you to follow. You will all have your individual styles, you all have your individual ideas. So I'm not suggesting a template that you can use or should use to be a good writer. I'm just giving you some ideas and thoughts. And I hope you take that, I hope you receive that in that spirit. So again, this is not the God's gospel truth. Okay. There are many different versions, many different ideas that people have. When you read books, somebody will present an idea about scholarly writing in a certain way, other people will present it in a different way. People will tell you organize it this way, somebody else will tell you organize it that way. So don't get bogged down with that. Use your individual style. Your individual literary style is perhaps the best style. Of course, it has to be grammatically correct, and the organization of ideas should be done. And there is a scholarly language, which, as you will see this presentation, you'll get a hang of that. There's a scholarly tempo, scholarly language that is important, which is sort of like, for want of a better expression, is like the universal language or uniform language that we use when we are talking about scholarly work. Okay. So let's, again, I'm going to skim through these slides. This is not important right now. There are some heavy planners who plan their work and work their plan in advance. They invest the greatest amount of time in mapping out the manuscript in advance. Some people are wired differently. They already have the whole project in their mind that they're going to write about. And then they go ahead and put those ideas into writing. Okay, more power to them. But most people who are starting out writing are not heavy planners. Okay, they are just dabbling with new ideas, with how to present notions and how to present ideas. So heavy revisers, there are folks that will do the work and they spend an inordinate amount of time revising their work. They devote less time to planning or make a plan, but do not follow it. They revise a manuscript into being by continually cutting, pasting, and experimenting ways to communicate ideas. They sometimes feel that their writing is never really finished. So they get into a panic mode. Okay. They're constantly revising, constantly revising. As a result of that, it's like, it's kind of like an analysis paralysis almost. You're writing very little, but you're revising a lot. Okay, so just remember that. Sequential composers devote approximately equal times to the various phases of writing, planning, drafting, and revising. They derive their confidence from adhering to a linear, well approached method to writing. Procrastinators, a big one for me. A lot of people will procrastinate because writing is not a comfortable activity. You know, it's not like having a cup of coffee at the Starbucks, which is so uh, pleasantful or pleasing. So you avoid things in life that are uncomfortable. You want to do things that come easy. It's human nature, so you're not alone there. Discovery drafters seek to capitalize on unexpected ideas because they regard these as the source of creativity in their work. So they discover new ideas, they read literature, they come up with new ideas. And that's where AI could help, because AI could help you brainstorm something new that you're thinking about, which you haven't thought about in the way that AI can present ideas. So that's one aspect of AI which can be really resourceful to new writers. Launching a writing project, okay, it involves certain very specific activities. When I say launching a writing project, it could be a research proposal, it could be a new writing, like a journal article that you're doing, or it could be just another piece of writing, an essay that you're doing, an academic essay. So, what are the 4 steps? Okay, step number 1 is to set the goal, state the project's purpose. What are you trying to do this project for? And the audience, for whom are you doing this paper or this proposal for? Are you doing it because you want to apply for a grant? Are you doing it because your university requires you to write a research article? So you have to decide why you are doing this thing. Okay. So you're setting the goal. Start collecting, identify resources, read and take notes immediately. So before you do any piece of writing, I would highly recommend to do a substantial amount of reading on the topic that you're going to be writing about. So what do I mean? So if you're writing about emotional abuse as a phenomenon, then you have to know some literature around emotional abuse. You have to read books, you read journal articles, read other articles on emotional abuse. So to get a hang of what it is like, okay, what is what kind of conversations are happening around emotional abuse in the academy. So you ought to know what are the resources available for that. So you identify resources, read, take notes, jot down as many notes as possible. I always do that myself. I fill many such pads of just notes, notes, notes. And when I do my writing, I do not necessarily use all those notes. So I take the essence of the notes. I will fill the entire book, but then I will take some essence. I will highlight certain portions that I want to go back to. That's very helpful for me. But you may have different ways of doing it. Some people do digital notes. They can create a lot of digital notes, and which is good. I'm more into a hybrid version. So I'll do some actual handwritten notes, but I'll also do some digital notes. Like if you're using, like I use Apple devices. So in Apple, there's a feature called Notes, and I'm sure Android also possibly has something like Notes where you can just jot down quick notes digitally that you could go back to. And that's a great reminder because it can retrieve, if by keyword and key phrases, it can retrieve that for you. So I would use that. Break the work into tasks taking less than an hour or two. Okay. So do not take the whole entire bulk of the writing together. So the writing can contain, like, for instance, if it's a project proposal or a research proposal, it can have an abstract, it'll have the introduction, it'll have the methodology chapter, a literature review, a data analysis and interpretation chapter, research findings, implications, and future designs. So it can have all of those chapters together. So you can have like 4 or 5 different chapters. If you start thinking about all 5 chapters, you're going to get freaking totally overwhelmed. So I would not do that. Okay. And by the way, somebody who had done the annotation, would you please go back to your annotation and clear that up because that is appearing in all the slides now. And this is what I'm talking about. This line somebody did. Okay. So it may have been Anshul or someone who were trying it, and I'm not holding it against you. But if you go back into the annotation tool and just use clear annotation, that should clear that because otherwise it's going to appear on all the slidings. And it's really distracting for me. Thank you. Clustering, organizing your work in your mind is an important activity. Okay. So I would do that. All right. Next, writing a good title and abstract. Titles and abstracts capture the essence of your study. So what I've noticed is when people do a journal article or do another piece of writing, all good scholarly writing contains at the head of the piece, there is an abstract piece. Okay. And we'll discuss in more detail what an abstract really is, but don't get tempted to write an abstract first before you write anything else. People think that, oh, it's important for me to write. The abstract is not your introduction per se. The introduction piece is a separate piece from the abstract. What is an abstract? An abstract, think of an abstract like a movie trailer, okay, which contains different scenes from the movie, and they're all put together in 30 seconds or 40 seconds, right? So what I would do is look at the abstract from the standpoint of something that can be completed once you have done the entire work. Once you've written the entire journal article, done the proposal, you can go back and write an abstract later. Because think of it this way, if the abstract is like a movie trailer, can you create the movie trailer before the movie has been made? Because it's taking scenes from the movie. It's putting together, it's consolidating scenes from the movie. So first complete the movie, or at least the majority of the scenes, before you go back and pick and choose the scenes that you want to put in the abstract. All right. So titles and abstracts capture the essence of a study. There are simply teasers and appetizers, not the main course. This is not the main course. This is abstract is just a teaser. A good title or an abstract is like a billboard, like a hoarding on the by the road or a highway. You'll see all this hoarding advertising. It's an advertisement for your piece of work that you've created. Okay, is to attract attention to what you're going to be doing. An abstract should not contain more than 200 to 250 words. I've seen some folks that create abstracts of like 300 words, 350 words. Guys, you're not writing an entire chapter. An abstract should be no more than 200 to 225. I prefer abstracts to be more like 200 to 225. 250 for me is too much. 150 is too little. Okay. So somewhere in that between the 200 to 220 is a sweet spot, right? Abstracts do not contain author citations. So in your abstract is made like a single piece. It's not divided into paragraphs. There should be no paragraphs in an abstract because an abstract is found in searches. So the search engines will only look at they will look at the word abstract and look at key expressions, key terms. That's why abstracts are always followed by some key expressions and key terms. Okay. Do not use citations. Do not use references. Such and such author said this, such and such this. Do not use and I'll talk in the subsequent slide. Do not use do not define a concept that you're writing about or going to be talking about in your research unless the concept is not part of the mainstream literature. What do I mean by that? So when I completed my doctoral study in 2014, I was writing about a study phenomena known as negative capability, which was an expression that was coined by the famous English romantic poet John Keats in 1817, where he was referring to the Shakespearean ability to stay with mysteries, doubts, and uncertainty without the irritable reaching after fact and reason. So if I say to you negative capability, most people have not heard about negative capability. So I needed to, in my abstract, start my abstract by defining negative capability as Keats defined it. Keats did not define it, he used it as an expression, but it has become canonical. So people tend to define negative capability as the capacity to stay with certainty and uncertainty. So I had to literally define that. Now, if I was talking about emotions, is it pertinent for me? If my project is around emotions, do I need to, in the abstract, define what an emotion means? Not at all, because an emotion is a mainstream word. Everybody understands emotions. So if you're using a very peculiar study phenomena that people do not really understand, it is important to define that. Other than that, stay away from definitions, stay away from references. So and so author Wendy and Stallworth said this and this in 2017. That's not where it goes. It goes into the introduction chapter and the following chapters, but not in the abstract chapter or not in the abstract piece. So do not define a concept unless it is novel, which I just spoke about. Avoid first person use. When you're writing an abstract, it's a scholarly piece. Avoid using the first person. I said that, I did this, I or we. Do not use them as first person. Use third person language. The researcher did this or the researcher did that, right? Present complex ideas in simple, straightforward language. So use very simple, straightforward language. Do not use bombastic or pompous expressions. Don't assume that your readers know exactly what you studied. Arouse their genuine curiosity, not their disinterest. Sometimes you can turn off people by becoming too flowery, but by impressing them. Don't try to impress the reader. The readers will be impressed with good writing, good English, good grammar. But most importantly, readers are looking for content. What are you really talking about? And are you presenting your ideas in a coherent, in an organized way? That's what readers are looking for. They're not looking for flowery language. So don't try to impress them. Arouse their curiosity, not their disinterest. Don't turn people off. Abstracts must contain the following: an opening statement, an approach or a methodology. So your opening statement might be what it was for me. The study is an exploration of John Keats's expression in 1817 entitled Negative Capability, which means blah, 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 blah. So I recruited so many, or 14 leaders were recruited for this study in a triangulated manner, um, between business organizations, private practice, and academic settings. And the methodology used was such and such. The findings indicate, the findings that you present in a abstract are always done in the present tense. Do not share findings in an abstract using the past tense. So don't say the study discovered or the study explored or the study found. Always the study finds or the findings of the study are, because your findings are still relevant. It's not that you did it for the purpose of the research and now they are not relevant at all. So findings should always be presented in the present tense. Okay. So again, opening statement, approach, methodology, outcomes, and findings. So whether sometimes you use the word findings, sometimes you will use the word outcomes. It's the output of the research. What did you really achieve? And what have you discovered? What have you explored? What new ideas are you sharing? And the final, future implications. So an abstract should capture the opening statement, approach, methodology, outcomes, and findings, and future implications. Okay. Going on to the next, writing for publishing. While it's every scholar's dream to get published in a prominent, peer-reviewed international journal, we all want to be published in reputable, popular Scopus journals. But it's difficult to get published until your piece is exceptional. Because, and by the way, I must caution you all, do not fall for the trap of somebody writing to you and saying, oh, I found your piece on such and such that you had presented to so and so journal. We are very interested in posting your piece. They will try to attract you, seduce you into sharing your article with them. Now, sometimes a journal, a respectable journal, will reach out to you, but most times you're reaching out to respectable journals and presenting your work to them to see if that can be published. So journals are working in two different fashions. One is a subscription model where authors are not required to pay an article processing fee or article processing charge, APC, for their article to be published. Why? Because the journal receives revenue from subscriptions. Subscriptions means universities that have subscribed to this journal are paying them a fee. So like if there are 3,000 universities are paying a small, even if it's a nominal amount of $500 per university, then there are a lot of revenues generated through that. So they do not charge the author any fee, but it will be peer reviewed. A lot of the articles that you're going to be writing about are going to be peer reviewed. You all understand peer review, okay? Which really typically means that your article will go through a process of blind review, usually typically 2 to 3 different external authors. It's all anonymized, okay? It's all blinded. So that's why they call blind review, all right? But there are also now an increasing number of open access journals where if you want to publish in that journal and your article is accepted after a blind review, they will ask you to pay an article processing charge. Article processing charge could be as little as $1,000. It could be as high as $3,000 per article. But the advantage there is the article goes into the public domain right away. The moment it is, you say yes, you pay the fee, it's in the public domain. People start reading your article, etc. So that fee can be hefty for the average person. Even for me, I'm in the US, and if I have to publish an article and somebody's charging me $3,000, I'd have to probably think twice. Is it really worth my money for publishing in that journal? So I might publish in a really high quality journal and pay the fee. Like I published an article back in 2023, I believe it was, in the International Journal of Qualitative Methods, and they charged me a fee of $2,500. I was glad to pay that fee because I know my article is in a very, very prominent international journal. It's rated the third or the fourth journal in terms of social science research. Okay, in the domain of social science research. So it was a reputable journal. It made sense for me to do that. But sometimes it may not make sense for you to pay that hefty fee. Now, if you're part of a university and the university is interested in you getting published in that journal, they will either subsidize that APC or they will pay the entire APC on your behalf. The university can afford to pay that. But a solitary author, okay, an academic, may not be able to afford it out of their own pocket, right? So reach out for that. There are other respected academic portals like ResearchGate, Sage Advanced Reprints, Springer Briefs that routinely publish original, robust research. There's a new wave, it's called preprints. Sage has an advanced journal, it's called preprints. So preprints are not blind review pieces. They go through screening. So when you send a really high quality article, they're not just going to accept each and every article that comes their way. Their rate of rejection is quite high too. But if your article is robust, it's well written, well organized, and it contributes something really novel to the field, they will put it through screening. Screening usually takes about 5 to 6 business days, and they will immediately publish your article. Now, remember, it'll say there that these articles in the preprint are not peer reviewed and should not be construed as authoritative pieces sponsored by that journal. Okay, so they're just saying they're early versions of research papers that, and oftentimes people will do publishing, and I have 3 articles already in that over the last few years. That so take it as a parking space. You park your articles there. People are reading your articles. People are downloading it. They cannot comment, but they can certainly download your articles. And so the views, the downloads. So there's a metrics that is there. But these articles are not peer reviewed, so they're not authoritative pieces. So sometimes people will publish in the advanced journal, and then they will send that article to a prominent Scopus journal for review. Okay. And so it helps to have your article in a pre-printed stage, so that when you send it to to a journal, they'll be more likely to at least look at it because they know that your article has already received some exposure. It is a much quicker route to publishing, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I've already discussed some of this, but I wanted to alert you to this process, that do not get bogged down that I'm going to have this article published in Scopus A journal, and only if my article is published in A journal will I go forward with it. Otherwise, I'm not interested. You're going to be left in the dark because a lot of your work, which may be worthwhile, is not being seen by others because it's not been published yet. Okay, so keep that in mind. Self-publishing versus regular publishing. So there's also a new wave of self-publishing. So your work can be published in the form of a Kindle, uh, paperback book, hardcovers with Amazon International Marketplace. My firm helps authors convert their manuscripts into really worthwhile books, Kindle ebooks, paperbacks, and of course hardcovers. Hardcovers are available in the U.S., but India has a very big presence within Amazon marketplace, and a lot of books, a lot of authors from India are publishing on Amazon. So what that does is it opens the field for you, which is not just academics, as in ResearchGate or academia. There'll be more leaders from NGOs and business organizations, because those are the folks that go into Amazon. They are not going to, leaders are not going to look, because a lot of these leaders are not interested in heavy funda research type articles. So they'll go into the Amazon marketplace or go into Barnes and Nobles to pick out, and they'll do a keyword search and your book could come right up. It's also a means for you to earn some royalty off of that. So again, just sharing some ideas with you on how to go about bringing your ideas forth, bring them forth into a coherent way, so you can have your ideas published out there. So let me look at now. This is where we start with a slightly heavy part of the event today. So we call it crafting effective research proposals. I first did this entire presentation or facilitated this back in 2020, as you can see, and it was very well received. It was uploaded to YouTube. So I wanted to share some ideas with you on that. So let's get started with that. Part one. So this is in separate parts. All right. Part one is, what is a research proposal? You've all heard the expression research proposal. What is a research proposal? What are the components of a research proposal? And what are the goals of a research proposal? Okay. You've all heard the expression research proposal. Please send me a research proposal. Even when you're applying for a PhD program, especially not so much in the US, but if you're applying to Canada, if you're applying to Europe, if you're applying elsewhere, Australia, New Zealand, they'll all ask you to put together a mini research proposal. It's not a full-blown research proposal, but it's a mini research proposal. So research proposals are the thing that you really have to get your arms around, because you're going to have to present the research proposal somehow in your journey. So all research starts out by identifying a meaningful problem or an opportunity about which we want to gain better knowledge or find a solution. So when you're writing a research proposal, what are you writing a research proposal about? It's not just the topic of your research proposal. What are you really discussing in your research proposal? So you have to identify a meaningful problem that is researchable. If your research question is how many clouds are there in the sky, is that a researchable item? No. So you have to make sure that what you're presenting as a meaningful problem has some viability. It is a feasible item to research. So identifying a meaningful problem and an opportunity is important. Think of a research proposal as a formal roadmap that outlines what you want to research, where you are today, where you hope to go, how you will get there, and what challenges you might encounter on the way. It's kind of like, you do the GPS. Now, GPS is very much in India also, which is such a nice thing to see when you're driving. on your phones or on your car screens. The GPS is already installed, so you know turn right, turn left. So it's kind of like a road map. You're going for a destination, and it tells you turn left here, turn right there. So these are the streets and the corners, and then it might tell you there is a traffic congestion in this segment, etc. So it's kind of like take it as a GPS where it's guiding you. So what I wanted to do, um, and I've been talking a lot right now, and I don't want to fill your heads with all this without you sharing with me some of your thoughts and some of your ideas. So we'll have a quick, short Q&A for about 5 minutes, maybe 7, 10 minutes, um, to get your thoughts about this. What are some of the things that are important to you that you would like me to focus on without me just making my own presentation, my own spiel here? So you can just raise your hand or just open. We are not too many people here. I think we are only 8 participants, which is not a bad turnout. We had, I think, about 12 or 13 participants who had signed up. So some couldn't make it, which is fine. Um, so who would like to just share some thoughts, any ideas? You'll have to unmute yourself and talk. Go ahead. Everybody's so quiet. You have nothing to say? Okay. Neha, you raised your hand. Why don't you
Yes.
why didn't you just talk?
Okay. I was
We're
waiting.
a small group, so just go ahead. You don't have to take my permission. Just go ahead and talk.
Sure, sir. Thanks. So one of the reasons why I'm attending this workshop is for a particular challenge that I've been facing in
Okay.
writing.
Okay.
I am currently I've just stepped into the fourth year of my doctoral program, and I'm doing an ethnography, and I'm almost done with my field work.
Okay. Where are
So
you pursuing your doctorate?
I'm in India.
Oh, you're in India. Okay. What institute are you doing it from?
I am at IIT Kanpur.
IIT Kanpur. Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah. And I'm
Okay. And
doing my
you're
PhD
doing
in
an ethnography,
psychology.
and you're
Yes.
doing a research on ethnography, right?
Yes, yes. My
Ethnography of
method is
what?
ethnography.
What ethnography are you doing?
So I'm looking at what does care look like across different mental health care settings. So when I say different mental health care settings, I've picked up institutionalized as well as deinstitutionalized mental health care settings. So I'm
What
looking
settings?
at
What no, I couldn't catch that. What settings are you talking about?
institutionalized and deinstitutionalized mental health care settings.
Oh,
So these are,
mental health
yes,
care settings. Okay, okay,
yeah.
okay.
So these are psychiatric hospitals, community mental health programs, and halfway
Ah,
homes.
okay,
And I'm the last week of my field work actually, so I'm just wrapping things up.
okay,
Um,
okay.
One of the challenges that I face when I write my work is when I'm reporting my data. I am able to report my data in a very simple language. Like I can tell what is it that I found and what are my findings. Um, Something that I struggle with a lot is connecting my data, my findings to the theoretical threads that already exist out there. So, like
Mhm.
earlier, how you were explaining that we need to take notes when we are doing a literature review, we need to have we need to do our a thorough reading of the subject that we are into. So, When
Right.
we start our work, we do literature review. Whilst we are doing field work, we read a lot of work that's already happening out there.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I've been having trouble with is whilst I'm writing, I'm not being able to connect the theory with my findings. And I don't know how to bring those two together.
Okay.
So I was
S-
wondering if you have any suggestions for
Yeah.
me of how
So
I can navigate.
unfortunately, I cannot backfill this for you. What do I mean by
Hmm.
that? It
Hmm.
seems to me that you perhaps, and
Hmm.
and I'm not accusing you for anything. This is very
No, no,
common. It's
yes.
a very common. It's a
Yeah,
very common. So please take it as a critique, not as criticism of your work. Okay.
100%.
I
Yeah.
often find people shortchange the process and they get
Hmm.
lost. They don't know where they're headed, okay, or
Hmm.
how to make connections with where they were, right?
Okay.
And because they
Hmm.
did not follow a certain protocol. And
Hmm.
that's why following a certain protocol. So, what do I mean by that? Like, for instance, even in ethnography, we have
Hmm.
themes that emerge,
Yes.
right? Right?
Yeah.
Themes are recurrences that you're occurring. You're seeing some patterns that are emerging, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And you are, if you did not put in the work up front,
Hmm.
where it concerns identifying those themes from the raw
Hmm.
manuscripts
Yes.
that you created,
Hmm.
then you may have done some backfilling. In other words, you looked at the manuscript and said, oh, oh, this looks like a theme or that looks like a theme without following a proper roadmap, without feeling
Hmm.
there's a 6-step process for identifying themes. Because what
Right.
you're
So,
trying to do is you're not trying to extract like 1,000 themes from your work. You're
for
trying to
sure.
extract themes that are overriding or overarching, right?
Hmm.
That are the most important themes that you want to talk about because you're going to be
Hmm.
creating findings and outcomes from those themes and then connecting them with your literature
Yes.
and, of course, the theory, which you already
Hmm.
have probably worked on in chapter 2, which is your literature review.
Hmm.
Okay. So now the difficult challenge for you and why it's becoming a challenge is because perhaps, and again, I say this with guarded caution and not to accuse you for it, um, you may not have followed that process properly. So now
Hmm.
you're finding, okay, so I have this theme. Now you will try to find some literature that informs your theme or informs the outcome, or informs the finding. So it becomes challenging. Now,
So can I respond? Yeah.
go ahead.
So, to analyze my data, what I do is I am doing interviews. So there is a transcript that I have of the interviews, like I transcribe verbatim.
Yeah,
And then the method that I'm following to analyze my data is social constructivist grounded theory. So I
yeah.
do go through the process. So I will code my data, and then I will find out the themes and everything. I do have field notes
Are you
also.
using Kathy Sharma's method?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay,
Um,
okay.
and when we have, so like you said, I have all the theoretical understanding because I've done my literature review. So I have these things. I feel like in my head, they are very separate components that I'm not being able to bring together. So
Yeah, and well,
when
first of all,
I,
let me just
hmm,
pause here for a second, and just for the
hmm,
sake of just sharing this with the group,
hmm,
you have embarked on perhaps one of the most complex forms of methodologies to use in qualitative research. It is the
wow,
most elaborate, most
hmm,
exhaustive, most iterative
hmm,
methodologies to use constructivist
hmm,
grounded theory. Okay.
hmm,
So constructivist grounded theory is, and as all of you probably know, grounded theory is a method by which you either discover new theories or you refine existing theories.
hmm,
Okay. So because the entire thing is about theories, sometimes other issues that are more important within the corpus get a backseat, because every time you're thinking about making theoretical connections. But if you try to make theoretical connections well before you have a proper understanding through iteration going back and forth of what
Mhm.
was emerging in the data, because grounded theory is all emerging from the data. It's a data driven corpus, it's a data driven analysis.
Mhm.
Everything is grounded in the data. That's why the word grounded comes in, right? Right, Neha?
Yes, sir.
It is all grounded in the data. So everything is emerging from the data. You cannot bring stuff from outside. It has to be
Mhm.
within the framework of the data. So
Mhm.
now to answer your question, and I don't want to take uh, much more of the time because the others are here for a different purpose, for the purpose of seeing the entire presentation. So what I would recommend is if you want to run it by me, okay, um, just offline, if you can send me what your struggle, what your challenges are, I think I'd be able to more intelligently reflect on them, because right now I'm going in the dark. I'm going just by what you're telling me, because, but I don't
Mhm.
know your proposal. I
Right.
don't know
Yes,
your
sir. That makes
methodology. I
sense.
don't know
Yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
of that. So if you
Mhm.
want me to share some feedback with you on that, I'd be very happy to do that. But if you just write to me separately, we can take it off channel, right?
For sure, sir. Yes, that works. Thank you so
Is that
much.
is that is that okay? Does that sound reasonable? Because I don't want to take too
Yes,
much
yes.
time on just
No,
one
for sure. That
person's
makes sense.
issue. Okay?
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you. Thank you.
100%.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Anybody else who wants to say something before we move forward? You can just unmute yourself and talk. Wow. Everybody's really quiet. Doesn't anybody have anything to say? Come on, guys. Going once, going twice. Malik, what about you? I saw your text message. That is a lovely session, incredible section. What's incredible about this session? You haven't spoken at all.
Yeah. Hello, sir, and everyone. Thank you so much for this lovely session here. All the points which you discussed. I particularly enjoyed how you dealt with the abstract and the nitty-gritty when you talked about the abstract and the components and all the things we should consider. I have a
Mm-hmm.
question regarding research and, writing about a topic we are interested in. Uh,
Uh-huh.
Even when we start the journey of writing, like
Right.
scholarly writing, research article and all, we often start with a topic in mind, which is kind of, very broad. So I was wondering if you could suggest us some tools maybe or some ideas based on your experience and reflections on
Mm.
how to narrow down a broad topic. Thank you so much.
Ah, okay. Okay, got you. So what did everybody hear that? What Malik is saying is what when you start to write about something or write a proposal or whatever, you have such a broad topic in mind. But the broad topic is not the topic that you're researching. The topic of a research or the topic of a paper is not what you're researching, guys. Let's be very clear. So, how can you extract from the topic your problem statement, and from the problem statement, how can you extract a research phenomena? So, what Malik is really referring to is how to derive a research phenomena. And a research phenomena is a short phrase. It is not a three-sentence idea. It's a short phrase, like emotional abuse, right? It could be a research phenomena. Scarcity of water resources could be another phenomenon. Demonetization which happened in India some years ago, was another phenomena, right? Right? Bringing up a child in a single parent household can be another phenomena. Employee engagement can be yet another phenomena. What is it like for an engaged employee to work in a predominantly virtual organization? Could be the research question, but is the research question the research phenomena? No. The research phenomena is employee engagement. Your research is centered on employee engagement and not on the entire research question. Okay. So Malik, does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir. It absolutely does. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, and I
Appreciate it.
think in a subsequent slide I'll be talking about the research phenomena, but if not, it may be on a different presentation that I do on delving into the research phenomena. But I'm pretty sure I'll talk about it at some point. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Anybody else wants to say anything before we go into the next slides? How about you, Srinidhi?
I'm actually enjoying the workshop, sir, and it is my first time attending a qualitative workshop, and I'm very new to writing research proposals or blogs. So I'm
Okay.
thoroughly listening and making notes of it. Thank you.
You're making notes, but what are you making notes on?
Basically, whatever you mentioned, which I felt is important. Like you mentioned about the process of what you shouldn't be including when you're drafting a proposal, right? Few minutes
Oh,
back.
okay. So
So
let
it's
me
just
let me ask
making
you. So
small
let me ask you a
points, that's
question.
all.
Let me ask you a question. So if you were not making notes, Srinidhi, what would be your curious items to talk about? If you weren't making notes, what is it that would be compelling for you to ask?
One thing that I actually face while drafting blogs, so I'm in the process of writing blogs, I get stuck somewhere. So I don't know where to start and where to end. I have content, but I am not able to put it in a very good way that I want it.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. So that's good. So you're struggling as a new writer, and this is pretty commonplace when you're a novice researcher, a new writer, you're going to have those struggles. Rome wasn't built in a day, right? It takes a while for you to get there. So thank you for sharing that. I didn't mean to nudge you, but I wanted to see were you asleep in the session or were you listening? Anyway, just a joke. So let me go to the
Sir,
next
I
screen.
wasn't. It's so
Okay, good. Okay, most research proposals will have the following components. Okay, chapter 1 is the introduction, background, and significance. Chapter 2, it's a literature review, very exhaustive chapter. Chapter 3 is research design, methods, and methodology. Preliminary, chapter 4, preliminary suppositions, assumptions, and conclusions. Chapter 5 is, of course, the conclusion, and 6 references and citations. Okay, so all academic pieces typically follow this protocol, follow this pattern. Goals of a research proposal: present and justify a need to study a problem and how to conduct a study. So you have to propose a problem, a research problem. All research starts or begins in your mind with a research problem. You're struggling with something, you're academically curious about something. It's a problem that you're trying to address, right? Proposals contain extensive literature reviews. Your literature reviews have to be very extensive. Well, depending upon whether you're writing a dissertation, for a doctoral program, in which case your literature review might run into like 30 pages, 35 pages. All right. But if you're writing a short proposal, even then your literature review will run into 5 or 6 pages. It's a fairly involved piece. Must provide persuasive evidence that a need exists. So your proposals contain the problem statement, they contain a short literature review, depending upon what kind of proposal it is. But you're trying to provide evidence that a need exists. You have to have a need to research. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to research on this," and somebody asks you, "Why do you want to research?" You don't know have an answer to that. You have to provide a detailed methodology, including a statement of intended outcomes and challenges. A detailed methodology with the philosophy of the research that you're going to be doing, research methodology that you're going to be doing. A lot of scholars skip that philosophy of research because they don't understand, either they don't understand the philosophy of research, or their guides have not asked them to present the research chapter in a way that starts with the epistemology of research, the the philosophy of the research method that you're going to be, how you're going to create the research design, etc. So they end up mumbling and jumbling their entire proposal. Okay. Keep your introduction last. A lot of people are very perplexed when I share this screen. They say, "What do you mean? And introduction is something that I should be writing first." Right? Anybody confused about that? Keep your introduction last. Why would you want to keep your introduction last?
Yeah,
Huh?
it's a great question. So I would like to share some thoughts.
Go ahead.
Like the idea is when I tried to do this initially, it was like you said, quite perplexing and a challenge. But
Yeah.
over time, as I've practiced, like maybe working around assignments and essays and those kind of writing drafts, so I find it more helpful to write the introduction last, because then I have the whole roadmap or like the whole content in front of me, and basically I'm just kind of summarizing each paragraph, each idea, and so forth. So yeah, with practice, this gets perfect.
That is very, 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 very articulate. That was a very intelligent observation, because if you keep your introduction, you've already backfilled in the front end. This is what you're going to write about, that you're not going to escape that, because all your ideas then are going to be about what you. It was like putting together a preconceived notion about something without going through the journey. So you want to get from here to Chicago without actually going through the thousands of miles, right? That's not doable. So if you keep you have some introduction, you have some ideas, you're presenting problem, etc. in your head, but and this doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that you don't write anything in the introduction piece, but you keep it tentative, keep it fluid, keep it in a draft mode, so you can go back and put some ideas into the introduction chapter later. Because that's called the process of revision and editing your work. All right. So anyway, let's jump to a literature review. It's a very complex item. So I don't know what part of this should I really get into depth with you, or just keep it overall in a fluid draft mode for you, because it's a very complex, very heavy discussion here. So the precursor to conducting a robust literature review is identifying a clear problem, which is right here, if you can see it. Right? You see my cursor here in this block? The precursor to conducting a literature review is to identify a clear problem statement. What is the next? What is the focus of your research? What are you trying to investigate? Right? So the problem statement is there. But what within the problem statement are you trying to research? What are you trying to investigate? What are you trying to explore? And that becomes your research phenomena, right? Does literature exist on your area of study? So now, having determined that this is my phenomena of research, this is what I'm going to be spending my next few years doing or next 6 months doing, depending upon the kind of proposal you have. Does literature exist on this area of study? Is there any literature available on this area of study? And if literature is not directly available, is it indirectly available? Are conversations happening on your so you have to do a thorough, systematic literature review. A systematic literature review is doing a review on a review. And that's complex. And when you're doing a complex design, and this is for Neha, when you're conducting a complex methodology, right, such as constructivist grounded theory. Now, I must talk about that bibliography piece and the references piece. Typically, the more traditional viewpoint at one time was in grounded theory that you do not bring the references first upfront. You do not do you do the literature review last, because you don't want to have preconceived notions about the phenomena, even before you've researched it. But that trend of thought is now changing insofar as having some basic idea, because how can you start doing research in the dark? You have a phenomena that you want to research, but you don't know anything, nothing at all about that phenomena. How can you go ahead and do that? It's crazy. So that school of thought has now been abandoned to a large extent. And now some sketchy literature you have to have available on your topic. Okay? And so that literature when you're doing a grounded theory method, you have some literature available, but the bulk of the references, bulk of the literature you go back and do later. You don't do it up front. Okay? So it's a very complex idea, and some people are able to follow that, some people are not able to follow that, but I'm just putting it out there for you guys. If there is no direct source of preliminary literature on your research topic, this is the fourth block here. Can you identify other conversations happening in academic circles indirectly addressing your problem? Right? So if you don't have direct sources, can you talk about it indirectly? Framing research questions, a research topic is different. And here's, Malik, this will answer your question. I knew the slide was there. So a research topic is different from a research statement, which is different from a research question. RT, RS, and RQ. So what is a research topic? You made research. So give me an idea of, Neha, give me a research topic.
Let's say, because we were talking so much about emotional abuse, the word that's coming to my mind right now is trauma bonding.
Okay, trauma bonding.
Yeah.
Okay. So your research topic, guys, is trauma bonding. So it's different from a problem statement. So what is the problem statement? If I were to ask you, what might be the problem statement about trauma bonding?
The problem statement could be, I'm still thinking, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. We are in no hurry. I want to do this right. I want to be able to help you illuminate this. So trauma bonding is in your mind as a topic. Great topic. But what about trauma bonding as a problem statement. So what is the problem statement around trauma bonding? Why do you want to research trauma bonding? Why are you
So,
curious about trauma bonding?
children of children who grow up in dysfunctional houses,
Yeah,
dysfunctional families,
right?
um, they tend to get into trauma bonding sort of romantic relationships.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's something that we already know actually. So there is ample
No, that's
evidence now.
okay. That's okay. No, that's
Yeah.
okay. If you know that as a problem, but it can
Yes.
be something. So what you're stating is you already have a problem statement, but sometimes in research you have to look for something more novel about the problem statement.
Yes.
So if you're
Yes.
using the traditional, everybody understands that type, then you're not doing anything new.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
what about the problem statement might be something novel, is
Mm-hmm.
an angle that you want to take, a perspective that you want to take, which is refreshing,
Mm-hmm.
which may contribute more significantly to the existing literature. So you see where I'm going? So from the
Yes.
problem, so you have a problem topic, you have a problem, trauma bonding is the topic. Within that
Mm-hmm.
is a problem statement, which you just articulated beautifully, that
Mm-hmm.
children that when they tend to get into those kind of dysfunctional bonds,
Mm-hmm.
romantic relationships which tend to be dysfunctional.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the research question that you might have if you were doing this
Mm-hmm.
constructivist grounding? What might be the research question around trauma bonding?
Something that I'm thinking about right now is how I want to look at maybe a specific population.
Okay, so
So
would
I'm
you would
thinking
you would you
about,
consider factors?
yes, factors like identities, maybe genders, or people belonging to particular families. For example, I'm thinking about um, elder daughters
Uh-huh.
uh, growing up in middle income, not middle income, but Indian households.
Yeah.
Uh, because our attachment pattern looks very different from how attachment patterns with parents and caregivers looks like in the Western world.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh,
I've been in this country um since what is it now? 1987. So I've been here for 38 years, more than half my life I've spent here. So I probably have something to say about that, but of course that's beyond the scope of this discussion. We can talk
yeah.
about that later on sometime. But I get where you're going. So Malik, are you getting a drift of where we are going with this? Why it's important to have a distinction between the research topic, which is overall. Research topic can also create a title of the research. So the title of the research is different from a research topic. Of course, your title of a research will contain the research topic, which is fine. But developing a problem statement from that and then a research phenomena, right? Right? Developing a research question, a well-defined research question narrows down the purpose of your study, which is what you were struggling with, Malik, that how to narrow down the purpose of your study and ensure that your study focuses on the literature and is deep and specific, not just wide and generic. Deep and specific, not wide and generic. A good research question is both interesting and researchable. It is clear and concise. It is ethical. A research question must be ethical. So you're not having something dubious or something criminal. It's not ethical. So it has to be ethical. It must conform with good business ethics, good personal ethics. It allows data to be collected and analyzed. Very, very important aspect. You could have done all of this thing, but if you don't have a means of collecting the data, it's kaput. It allows data to be collected and analyzed. Okay. Review of literature, again, represents the major published works. Like good research questions, a robust literature review often guides your choice of methodology and research design. So don't fall in love with the methodology and then go back looking for a research question. That's like putting the cart before the horse. A thorough lit reviews is a precursor to establishing generativity, the ability of your study to contribute to the field and to add to the extant literature. It serves several purposes: supports your study, supports future researchers who come after you, and C, builds your subject matter expertise. You become an SME in your subject matter. Okay? Review of literature, again. A literature review is not a paper on a topic, it is a paper on the research about a topic. Okay, a lot of people who struggle with literature reviews will find this very interesting. Literature review is not a paper. You're not writing a paper on a particular topic. So if taking the example of trauma bonding, if you were looking for literature on trauma bonding, you're not writing a paper. Your literature review is not a written paper on trauma bonding. It is a paper on trauma bonding as a topic, but what conversations are happening around that? So you see, I hope you see the distinction there. There's not a paper on trauma bonding. You could write an essay paper, like three-page, 5-page paper on trauma bonding. But is that what literature review is? It is a paper on the research that has happened on trauma bonding in the extant literature. It is a paper on what authors have been saying about trauma bonding, what studies have been previously done about trauma bonding, what existing research is available on trauma bonding. It identifies key theories and theories, ideas for new research. Here, Neha, it identifies new key theories and theories, ideas for new research, and a theoretical framework for your study. Okay? And requires a significant amount of selective reading. So when you're doing unless you're doing a haphazard literature review, which unfortunately, a lot of researchers end up doing. So when I say haphazard, I don't mean in a very negative way. I just mean in a disorganized way. They do the literature review, then they'll take something from here, something from there, something to there, and fill a chapter of 36 pages. That's not what a literature review is. Critical to identify types of journals and keywords that you will use related to your topic. Identifies appropriate research strategies best suited for your phenomena. Review of literature, no magic formula. Different methods call for different review approaches. Quantitative studies are deductive and require a more extensive review, like testing theories and all that. Qualitative studies are inductive and require shorter reviews. Allows for new literature to evolve from collected data. So quantitative studies are more hypothetical based. They're on hypotheses. Qualitative studies are inductive. From select cases, you make some general observations. It's a top-down approach, right? Allows for new literature to evolve. So there's a lot of emergence that is happening in those. Identify keywords, develop an outline and annotate, then identify common themes. Okay, extensively read other reviews that are done. Key features of effective literature reviews. Again, this is an entire segment that I do on literature reviews itself, because I'm addressing a certain problem that most researchers currently have. Literature review. They can do the introduction part well, they can do the transcription and analysis of data well, but they struggle with the literature review. Okay, so is the review easy to understand? Is there a logical connection between the problem statement, research question, hypothesis, and the literature review? Do you feel like an SME after reading the review? After reading your own review, do you feel that you have a certain level of expertise in your topic, in your subject? Are you comfortable developing a research method based on the ROL? ROL is the research of literature, by the way. So are you comfortable developing a research method Now you've done this literature review. Now you're looking for a method. So you have a research topic, you have a research phenomena in mind, you have a research question in mind, you have done some literature review. Now is the time when you develop, okay, so what methodology might I use? Not what methodology other researchers had used before, so I should also use that methodology. Novice researchers often fall into that trap. Because everybody else used that, so I should also use that. That's not the correct way of doing it. Okay. Now this is only part two, so we have very little time. But I'm just sharing with you research methods, methodology, and design. I go into the entire discussion around that. Research methods, qualitative, phenomenology, action research, ethnography, research design, quantitative, qualitative, mixed methods, research question, what is the shortest and best way to get there? Research purpose, investigate different ways to get there. Research problem, where do you want to go from here? Research question is your methodological starting point. Again, PhD is the doctor of philosophy. Doctor, yes, but where's the philosophy? People talk about, I was talking about research philosophy as part of your in your methodology chapter. Axiology, beliefs about what is ethical. Ontology, beliefs about the nature of reality and being. Epistemology, researcher beliefs about his or her role in the research process. And when in the epistemology, we also talk about reflexivity. Methodology, the actual approach to it. See how you develop from there into a methodology at the end. The end goal is the methodology. Inductive versus deductive, I've already talked about. Let's unpack a qualitative method. This is very involved discussion. So I'm going to leave it here a bit here. This is almost the finish, but I want to do something very interesting that will also help you unpack some of what you've just seen. I know I've gone through a lot, but when you go through a lot, you don't become a subject matter expert in any one piece, but you have a general idea. And those sometimes from those general ideas, you can have some curiosity that gets generated. So here I would like to pause with about 5 minutes remaining and open it up to you guys, whoever wants to go and say something. As a phenomenologist, it's always very important for me to go into the ontology, the nature of being of an event. What was it like for you to be in this? I'm not seeking only the positive, I'm seeking even the negative. Whatever came to your mind as something that perhaps could have been done better, perhaps could have been done, because I know I've hurried through this. I could have presented only 3 or 4 slides or maybe 5 slides and gone into the depth of those 5 slides. But I figured I wanted to give you an overview of the entire process. So you should know the other expertise that I have, which at some point in time I can share with you. So why don't you guys go ahead and share a quick few thoughts about this before we end up?
Sir, is it okay if I go ahead?
Okay, it's always okay. We are only 3 people here now, so including me,
okay.
4. So go ahead. It's free for all.
Thanks so much for doing this. I was very excited to attend this workshop. I've been following you on LinkedIn for a very long time, so I was really looking forward to be a part of this.
Okay.
Something because the workshop is titled Scholarly Writing. And the way you also started your presentation, it was mainly focused around writing. For example, you started with the problems that we usually face when we start to write, and though I'm going to say that those are all the problems that are faced,
Yeah.
continue to face. I don't know. So I was expecting to hear more about writing per se, maybe different exercises that we could use to write what we want to write about, from journal writing to thesis to grant writing and proposal writing. So those
Yeah.
were some of the things that I was looking forward to. However, what I heard towards the middle and the end of the presentation was more about research and like the steps to doing research, the different components and different parts of it. So I feel like there was a mismatch in what I expected and what I heard today.
Okay.
So yeah, that's that. But other than
Okay.
that, thank you so much for like putting me on spot and making me think through with you. So like whilst you were asking me a question, I was sitting here and thinking about like like the research topic, research question, problem statement, and everything. Sometimes when we move forward in our research journeys, we tend to forget the very basics that are there in research, and we tend to get confused between different things. So today was like a good revision exercise for me as well. So yeah, thanks so much for that.
So
That's all from me.
interesting. No, thank you so much for sharing candidly, both from a positive standpoint and what you felt was negative, or something that was lacking. And quite interestingly, when I did my initial workshop on this few years ago, I think about 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years ago, the preparation that went into that workshop was different. Everybody was supposed to provide a short essay, just a one pager, half pager on. I'd given them a title, and I'd asked them to provide an introduction, a written piece. Then each one of them actually presented that in the workshop. So our entire focus was on the writing part, the scholarly writing part. There was the other part was not included. But then when I found that a lot of people who were interested, and many of them, I think about 6 or 7 of them did not join. And I looked at their background, looked at their profiles. They were all researchers, or most of them
Hmm.
were researchers. So I figured that putting something in from that standpoint might have been helpful to them.
Right.
And sure
Hmm.
enough, they didn't show up here. So, which is, of course, their loss and my loss too. But I take your point very well, because if the workshop is titled Scholarly Writing and
Hmm.
Publishing, then it should be focused on scholarly writing. So there has to be
Hmm.
some preparation that goes into it, as in developing some pieces. Then we talk about, then critique, and have the group critique those pieces together, and do all of that kind of stuff. But that part that you missed, I'd be very happy to work with you one on one, if you like, and help you develop that. And that goes
For
to
sure, sir.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to help you with that. But thank you for sharing that. Malik, how about you? Are you there, Malik? I guess Malik must have stepped away. How about Srinidhi?
Yes, sir. So I thoroughly enjoyed the workshop, as I mentioned, and I'll be putting it in practice. So I was basically having trouble with literature review. I used to get stuck for a long time reading the literature.
Okay.
So I need to work on a lot of things, as I have mentioned. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward for more workshops as I'm considering the research field forward, especially qualitative research.
Right.
So thank you very much.
No, that's great. And so, Malik, if you're not there, or you've stepped away, then I'd like to end the workshop. As I said, it's now 10:30 for me, which is 9 for you guys. So we said 7:30 to 9. So I don't want to take more of your time, and cutting into your dinner time and all that. So I want to thank all of you for, or at least those of you that decided to come and share your ideas. There's always some uncertainty and some ambiguity that happens in digital sessions such as this, because there's so much vastness of content that is available, that is very difficult to present things in a highly organized way that is going to appeal to each and every one of the participants equally. It's just not possible. It's less asking for the impossible. So, but we'll keep it in mind, and maybe the next time we do a writing workshop, it'll just be about writing, okay, and not about the research part. Okay, so I'll keep the research part separate. Actually, I do a separate workshop. I've done all of these workshops before, on the developing research proposals, developing research questions, and all of that stuff. I just integrated a lot of the slides into this one. But anyway, thank you again for your time and attention. And okay, all right, okay, fine. So with that, I'll end, and take care and have a nice evening all. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.